Thanks a lot for coming. I'm Chris. If you were here for the talk, which was entitled Starting Your Career in Video Games While Still at University, this is a little bit like that as well. Now I'm going to talk to you about how to sell shovels in the games industry. Have any of you been to this talk before last year? Okay, perfect. New audience. So let's do a quick show of hands. Who here has actually made a game before? Okay. Have any of you put it on any storefront, like Itch or Google Play or something like that? Yeah? Okay. Have you made any money out of it? Okay. Anybody here who has actually made money out of games? Yes? Okay. One person in the back, and they're a volunteer at the London Games Festival, so you know. You have at least one route to success. Volunteer here next year, if you can. I was in a position similar to you. So I was a student at the University of Suffolk. I studied games design. And then I made a few games. None of them were actually published. But we did win a Global Game Jam Award, which was really cool. It was only afterwards that I realized that the Global Game Jam doesn't actually offer awards. So it was like the university just giving us merits. I then went on to work for Watch Dogs, which was really, really awesome. I ended up being in the Ubisoft graduate program. They liked me. I stayed there. I stayed at the company. We made the game. The game sold really well. I then decided that actually I wanted to strike at it on my own. So I decided to get involved and start doing community activities. I went back to Ipswich, and these are some of the stuff that some of the things that I've done. I've worked a lot with students, and actually I started three things out of these activities. The first one was starting the Global Game Jam in Romania, my home country. We went from having 20 people in a basement to actually helping start the first higher education course in games design in Romania, and having it there with like over 100 people when we organized the game jam, the Global Game Jam. I also started Game Anglia, which is a community interest company who's looking to develop the games industry in the east of England by doing events for game students. We are holding the biggest game development conference in the region in the east of England. So that's pretty cool. It's been going on for about 3 years now. Kim has been a supporter from day one, so it was really good to see her here doing the keynote. And we also started Game Heroes, which is an initiative to kind of like teach game development and do game dev education throughout Europe. Now, the reason why I wanted to ask you if you've made money from games is because you're all here with different motivations, right? So when I started all of these, I didn't start them thinking, oh, you know what, I'm going to make a living off of it, I'm going to become the next Jeff Bezos and things like that. Who here wants to make games because they like making games? Okay. And how many of you want to meaningfully affect your players, like impress them, make them cry, make them laugh, things like that? Okay, so you are the right audience for this talk. And the reason why I say this is because this isn't a talk which is going to help you get into a big game studio. This is a talk which I hope at the end of it you're going to have some career options in front of you that you may not have thought about before. And you'll be able to do those career options, stay in the games industry, while at the same time working on your dream games, the ones that you've just talked about, for the motivations that you've just talked about. So the games industry is pretty cool at the moment. Last month, 2 weeks ago, the Game Developers' Choice Awards happened in San Francisco while at GDC. And these are the games who won. You can see here that out of the 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 or 13 categories, only 3 of them are from mainstream studios. So you have Nintendo, you have Red Dead Redemption, and God of War. Everything else, including the people who got awards, are indies, which is absolutely amazing, right? It's an amazing time for the indies in the games industry, and that's what you are at the moment. You're indies. All of you are indie game developers, I hope, unless you're Chris or Kim. And I've done this talk before at UKIE Student Conferences, and I always say, oh, you know, it's amazing. You know, you have Unity, you have GameMaker, you have Unreal. You can make games now for free. Or you can put your games on Steam or on itch, and anybody can do that now, right? Well, what's really cool is that every time I update the stock, new things appear. So you can not only put your games on Google Play and the App Store and on Amazon, but you can make games using engines like Twine and Bitsy and Pico 8. Who here have heard of those? Okay, yeah, awesome. Have you used Twine or Bitsy?
I think I worked into Pico 8.
Okay. So all of these engines are significantly pared down to help you to achieve one thing or make small games. So Bitsy is a game engine that you can run in your browser, and it allows you to make games using a two-color palette. And it's really simple games. I think you have like one interaction and the movement directions, and that's really cool. Twine allows you to do narrative adventures. So for all of you writers in the room, use that if you haven't already. Pico 8 is a game development all-in-one engine in your, I think it's in your browser, or you can need to download it. But it's quite easy to use, and it's really cool when you start looking into it. And in terms of storefronts, those weren't there last year, right? Discord had only just started doing storefronts. Epic Games hadn't started like with their game store, and GOG existed, but they weren't really that popular. So now new storefronts are there, and the games are being democratized, which is amazing, right? And this is all starting to this is all reminding me of a story from the California gold rush. I don't know how many of you have heard about that, but basically there's this story. The California gold rush is kind of like what started the state of California in the US. They found gold, and 300,000 people moved there in the space of 1 year, which, you know, considering how people have reacted in this country for about 100,000 people, you know, things have happened there. And it helped establish the state of California, and as I said, and it was a really big thing. But how did it all started? So there was this person who found some gold in river water. He had this little bottle, and he was going from village to village, or from like establishment to establishment, running around, and he was holding this small bottle of flask of water, basically with gold in it, and he was shouting, "Gold, gold! I found gold! Everybody needs to go there and like start mining, start sifting the water for if they want gold, because it's gold for everyone." Now, what he didn't tell people is that he had bought all of the mining tools, right? So all of the people who moved, most of the people who moved to California went there as miners, or as people who went there and they were sifting the water and looking to find gold. However, most of them, like about 95% I think, of people who went there as miners didn't actually make enough money as miners to be able to actually become rich. However, the people who did make a living off of the gold rush were these people. They were the people who were building the infrastructure for trains. They were the people who had grocery stores. They were the people who were washing the miners' clothes, or who were painting the houses or who were building the houses that had to be created to sustain that economy of the gold rush. So they're the people who had the tools and who were offering the services. The first African American US millionaire woman was a person who had a clothes washing business. So think about that when you're thinking about the games industry, right? Everybody wants to become a game developer, but what about the ecosystem around that needs to be supported, right? The London Games Festival, that's a games event that somebody is organizing, like UKIE and London Film, I think you were mentioning, was organizing.
King's London.
So and King's London's organizing, right? So people are doing this to have you here, to help you grow. Think about these sorts of things. And I did a bit of research and actually looked into the jobs that you can have, because at the moment, with all of these awards and all of these amazing organizations which are out there, it's a really great time to make a game. It's not necessarily a great time to be a game student like you are, because there's 200, according to the UKIE Games Map, there's 258 game university courses in the UK. That's just universities, that's not colleges. If each of these had 10 students, there's also 2,250 games companies. But if each of the courses had 10 students, that would mean that every year you have 2,580 people graduating. Or if they had 20 students, that's 5,000 people graduating, 5,000 new game developers entering the games industry every year. Or if each of the courses had 40 people, that would be 10,000 people entering the games industry. The number of companies hasn't adapted to sustain that. So it's a matter of how are you going to stay in the games industry, because that's what you want, right? You want to make those beautiful, meaningful games and still be able to make a living. So there's two routes that I see if you want to do that. As I said, I did a bit of research, and here's what I found. Some of the routes have to do with services. So you can get into things like games advertising, right? I've met a person who did a lot of the trailer, not a lot of the trailers, but a lot of the YouTube ads for things like Resident Evil 2, right? Anybody played that? Saw the ads? There were people who were not part of the games company who did those ads. That's advertising. Or you can get into traditional marketing, where it's things like you need to create graphics and posters and like all of those cool banners you see on the side of double-deckers advertising games. And that would still keep you in the games industry and talking to the game companies. Or, and here's where we're getting to that special guest, you can get into influencer marketing, which is like the new age cool thing where a lot of money is being dropped at the moment to help people get in touch with content creators. A lot of them have been dubbed influencers, and learn about the new games that are coming up. Streamers are also covered by influencer marketing. And I brought a friend of mine and co-worker, Chris Stokes, who can tell you a lot more about that if you're interested at the end of the talk. He's an amazing senior campaign manager with a company called PMYB. And they've been doing influencer marketing for 5 years now. So anything you want to know about getting into this field, do ask him. They did campaigns for like mobile games, and there's a lot of other things under the wraps at the moment, which he won't be able to tell you about because he has signed an NDA. But he can tell you about how you can get there if you want to. You can also get into localization. Anybody here who doesn't have English as a first language? Okay. So you can get into localization. At the moment, there's this really cool game conference going on called Game Dev World, and they're looking for people to help them translate all of the content, I think, into French, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Chinese traditional, Japanese, and one more language that I'm not that I can't remember. But you can get into localization. I know people who are specifically, so I know somebody who's working at Ubisoft, and his job is he's doing the Brazilian Portuguese, I want to say, localization for all of the Ubisoft games. He's the QA on that. So that's a job that you can get. And there's a lot of other games who are getting translated in more and more languages as game become more and more global. There's a lot of agencies out there who are looking for freelance translators, and as students, that's something you can do to get your name on a really big games credits, and also to make an income. You can get into public relations, because that's a job that a lot of like actual established game companies have. Kim's nodding, so you know that that's true. They've probably placed a few people in that. And you can learn about how to talk to press. You can learn about how to write a press release. These are things that you're going to need for your game. You can get into QA and actually playtest games. A lot of people have got their start in QA. You can get into playtesting research or into market research. So this is when you start testing assumptions. Who here has had their target audience for a game who here has defined the target audience for a game that they were making at any point? Okay. How much of that target audience was 18 to 24? Okay. When you think about it, the games that are really crushing it, right? Candy Crush Saga, that's not their target demographic. Their target demographic is women, mostly married with children, between 35 and 45. And that's how they made billions, right? Market research is how you get those answers. It's when you get, I don't know, let's say teenagers between 12 and 14 who are looking to learn more about the world around them, and you get them to play Pokemon Go, and you see how they play it and interact with it, and you can optimize based on that. That's a job, and there's a lot of market research agencies out there who are huge, absolutely huge, who are looking for those types of people. I know a company in Ipswich who is currently looking to hire somebody like that. If you're interested, let me know. You can also get into things like user behavior. So how do players behave when they're playing games? And actually analyze things like online communities and things like that. You can start, or you can join things like a game band. So there's, has anybody heard of Mystery Guitar Man, YouTube? Okay, so he started that, right? And he's always looking for collaborators. You can get in touch with him, join that sort of game band, make music for games or music about games. You can join a hardware company. Raspberry Pi, that's a thing. Sony, Microsoft, and their hardware division. You can join an eSports company, or you can start something like, you can join an educational events company, like we're doing at Game Anglia, right? There's so many game jams happening at the moment in London that you can just like search on Eventbrite and find like 10 of them happening over the next couple of weeks, which is something that you can get started, that can get you started in games. Join as a volunteer. So again, the volunteers for this event are really awesome people that you should totally talk to if you want to learn how to get into games. You can start game jams or join game jams. Other educational events can be things like talks and workshops or conferences. You can join a company that does game tournaments or esports, or as I said, esports events, or conferences like this one. You can join education. So you're, everybody here at HE, like at university level? Okay, so you can start teaching in colleges and in primary schools and in secondary schools and actually share your experience as a student with other college students. And that can lead into quite a pretty cool career. You have another person who's just started, who's a game design program coordinator, right there in the back. So if you want to learn more about teaching, talk to me, talk to him, and you can learn more about that. Academic research. There's not enough research being done at the moment in games, which isn't necessarily based in the US at one of the like top 3 or 4 universities. Most of the games researchers out there are from the US. We need to get more of Europe into this. Hybrid research, this is when you're working, for example, at Ubisoft, and then you write an academic paper about how the world in Watch Dogs 2, how people interacted with, how players interacted with the NPCs in Watch Dogs 2, and what you can learn about human behavior out of that. So you can work in a games company and also do academic research. We also need more game writers, not just narrative designers, but also people who want to write about the art of making games. We need more historians, we need more anthropologists, and that's because we know that games affect behavior, but also games affect the culture around us, and the culture around us affects the way that we make games. That's why we have US-based games and Western-based games, which are going to be completely different in terms of UI, in terms of expectations, to games made in Japan and in China, for example. So that needs to be studied, and it needs to be studied by people like you. Also, social research. Everybody talks about games causing violence. UKIE has a really big thread about that. They're always looking for people to research that. If you're not in your final year yet, that's something you can start as your final year project, your dissertation project. Legislative design, because we know that the people who are making the laws about games are not people who play games or understand the games industry. And game law itself. So in terms of legislative design, think that all the laws that are written are written by somebody who doesn't have game design expertise, and think about all the rules in a game that are written by somebody who has game design expertise but not law expertise. So if you combine those, you can have actual MPs who know what they're doing when they're legislating about games or legislating in general. Or you can start your own company in marketing or in localization or in community management, because if you've ever been part of a union, like your students' union, or started your game society, that's community management, and that's something that can land you a job in the games industry. You can do trailers and cinematics. So at GDC last 2 weeks ago, I met a person who does game trailers, and he's done game trailers for about 80% of the big games out there. How did he start? He did fan trailers for games that he liked, and then he put them up on Twitter. And at some point, when somebody from one of the companies that he had done fan trailers for had budget, they contacted him, and they were like, hey, we actually have a budget now. Would you like to do like a proper trailer, not a fan trailer? And that's how he started. And now he's working on some really huge projects. You can be a composer. Any sound people in the room? Okay. So you can talk to each other and see if there's games that you'd like to collaborate on, or actually make scores that you can then go to game jams and get people to use in their games. We need more game journalists. We need more, sorry. We need more streamers. Anybody streams out here? Yeah. So you'd be surprised at how much money influencer marketing can get you, both as a streamer and as a campaign manager. So you should totally talk at some point with these people. And it's really easy to get started into streaming. You just need like a webcam and OBS and the Twitch account. We need more influencers, as we discussed, and Chris can tell you more about the niches that we need influencers in. We need more video creators per se, who create videos about games, and podcast creators, and trailer makers. I just now noticed that I duplicated those. We need people who make tools for Unity and who make mods for games. We need people who write fan fiction, because fan fiction is one of the first steps to getting noticed as a narrative designer in the games industry. Also, the Assassin's Creed series has about 8 books published, which are basically like legal fan fiction. Canon fan fiction. And that's how those people started, right? We need more people to write books, as I mentioned before. We need people making assets for the asset store. We need people who organize game events. So the next time you're thinking about getting a speaker to your university, the next time you're thinking, oh, it would be cool if we could get a speaker to our course, go and ask someone. Like you have 12 speakers here who would love to come and give a talk at your university. Go and talk to them. At least 12. You can get started in hardware. There's a really huge alternate control community out there. There's this person who's exhibiting at Let's Play, Now Play This, Robin Baumgarten. Go and talk to him, because that's how he got started in the games industry. And now he's making amazing games with amazing funds. Or physical merchandise. I met someone whose only job is to get games merchandise done. From things like pins to things like what else? Hoverboards and like skateboards with your game's logo on it. That's an actual job that somebody has, and it's with a company called Limited Run, and you can talk to them. And there's about 3 or 4 of these companies, so there's enough space on the market for you if you wanted to start something like that. This is the UK Games map. It has all of the game companies in the UK in blue, all of the universities in red, and all of the service companies in purple. If we take out all of the game companies, a lot of the map is blank. If we take out all of the university courses, the 250 something that I mentioned, this is how the game service market looks like in the UK at the moment. And I'd say that's a lot of white space that you can tackle. Because at the end of the day, I want you out there making your bold, beautiful games that you're talking about, the games that you actually want to make. And at the same time, I know that you want to stay in the games industry and develop all of the auxiliary skills that you need in order to actually make your game a success. So why not make a really cool living out of it by doing things like game services and all of these alternate jobs in the games industry, while at the same time working on your games? Because your games are projects of passion, from what you've told me. So, you can do both and you can be really successful. And that's about it for my talk. I thank you a lot for being here, and I'll be here for Q&A later. Chris is here as well to talk to you about influencer marketing. And thank you so much.